Hello, and welcome to Gameweek 25, Gianni's team selection video for Fantasy Football Scouts. I have Gianni, the man with the name in the title, right here with me. Gianni, how are you doing?
I'm very well, mate. I had my worst game week I can ever remember last game week.
Ever?
I think so. I mean, I'm not one that looks at game week ranks much, but I did notice I was sort of 6 million game week rank at the weekend just gone. And I thought, I don't know if that's worse than I've ever had before. But the beauty of it was I didn't really care. And look, I massively care about fantasy football. And I've said before I didn't care about a rank. And I got loads of comments being like, oh, this pro pundit doesn't care enough about FPL. Trust me, I care about FPL. But what I mean was it was a good week to have a bad week because it was a low scoring game week. And when you look at how close it is around the rank I'm at, it's like, oh, okay, yes, I dropped how many percent in a red arrow and I lost 77k places. It's like, oh, I could make that back with 5 points or whatever. It's literally a return. So yeah, I didn't care. And I thought, this is really good for me. I clearly am in a good place where FPL doesn't affect me too much. And I massively have my daughter to thank for that. And this season I have played slightly differently and I don't care as much. But yeah, still, FPL is very important to me.
Oh, that's lovely. I think it was during COVID, and I think it was Serge Gnabry talking about football rather than FPL, of course. But he said that football is the most important, unimportant thing in his life. And I feel like, FPL is probably up there in terms of, like you say, if you've ever had a choice between FPL and family or anything like that, FPL's gone. But if you've got nothing else on, FPL's top of the list. And I think that's probably a fair assessment.
We are your Serge Gnabrys for today only.
Just considerably less good at our version of football. So speaking of which, shall we have a look at your points for the week gone? Run us through your team we have here on screen and talk to me, because it's been a little while since we've done this. You've had Az, you've had Joe. Talk to me about how you got here. I want to know about the team. What's the story?
Yeah, it wasn't a great week. Look, Kepa with 2, and then the back line, Trippier and Ake both with singles. Shaw with 6 points was nice. When I saw Shaw got subbed off, I was listening on the radio and they said Shaw was coming off, and I can't remember who else, Bruno or Rashford. And I was listening to radio. Because when you watch TV, you can see the clock always. On the radio, you never always know the timestamps. And I could tell the second half started about 15, 20 minutes ago. Has Shaw been subbed at 60 minutes, pre or post 60? And I think it was about 79 in the end, or 69 in the end. But I was sweating. And as I was driving, I said to my wife, I was like, can you check BBC Sport for me? And she was like, no, wait till you get home. Wait till you get home. You're listening to the game already. Wait till you get home.
What was it you were saying about the most important thing? I forget.
De Bruyne with 2, Saka got a return, Rashford's 15, well done to captainers. I didn't even consider it, if I'm honest. March with 2, Solly March missing big chances left, right and centre. The assist threat is still there. He is a brilliant FPL asset, I'm sure. I don't know how Brighton didn't win that game. Matoma with 2, Haaland with 4. And Nketiah, talking about missing big chances, I've not had a return from this boy yet. Eddie Nketiah.
You just said
surely
Matoma
this
with
is
2,
the week.
mate. Freudian slip there.
Say again?
You said Matoma with 2, not Marsh there.
You
secretly know that you want to make that move.
Because I was saying what a great FPL asset is. Oh yeah, I probably was thinking of Matoma over March.
Anyway, tell us about Nketiah.
Nketiah missing big chances too. The beauty for the Nketiah chances, as a Ben White owner, it was great to see the assist threat from Ben White. Like, he's definitely getting more and more forward every time I watch him. And he was unlucky not to go away with an assist. And for those that are Ben White owners that are worried about Tomiyasu coming in, as he did the other day, I think it was against Man City, I think we're good. And look, Ben White doesn't close games, end games. Doesn't bother me. It's very rare he comes off before 60. We saw it against Man United at the Emirates about a month ago. I was there only because he was on a yellow card and he was marking Rashford, who was having a great game. In a normal game state, we will see Ben White subbed a huge amount between 60 and 90, but usually it'll be 70, 80, right? And we see Rob Holding coming on a lot, and we see Tomiyasu coming on a lot. That's fine for me. There will be times when Ben White gets subbed and Arsenal are on a clean sheet and he banks those 6 points, and then they go on and concede in the last 10. So I'm very happy with him missing 10 minutes of every football game. Ben White's still a very good own.
Would you be worried about it happening with, say, Tomiyasu starting and Ben White being the one coming off the bench? We saw that Tomiyasu, was it City, I think he started?
It was City, yeah.
Maybe that's a specific tactical thing. Do you think that could happen more often?
I think if Tomiyasu had come in against City and done really well, there was a chance, but he had the pass back, which led to the De Bruyne goal. Didn't have the best game. So no, I think. So I'm just going to decline this call. I think we're okay. I think Ben White owners are okay. There is European football for Arsenal, which won't be a priority. And I think Tomiyasu will get his minutes there and he'll come off a lot for 10. But no, the way White played again at the weekend, I think for the assist threat alone, he's above Tomiyasu, head and shoulders above in the pecking order.
That's fair. I think we probably discussed this last time we chatted, but Arsenal have been relevant for almost every week for a while now. So you've got Saka, Nketiah, White. Sounds like you're a fan of Nketiah, fine with White. We know Saka's brilliant. If I gave you an extra wild card right now, but you had to choose triple Arsenal, which triple would you go for?
It would be the triple Arsenal attack. It would be Odegaard. It would be Saka. And it would still be Nketiah. Obviously, on a wildcard, the Nketiah with a view to going as soon as Jesus is back, you sell him, and then maybe you invest in a defender. And look, given the choice, if I'm picking a defender, I still think Gabriel probably slightly better if money's not an issue. But money is usually an issue somewhere down the line, and therefore I think White provides really good value at the back. And Zinchenko is also playing really, really well. Arteta doesn't rotate a winning side that much. So I'm really surprised to see people a few weeks ago talking about taking a 4-point hit to go White to Gabriel, for example. I went Martinelli off, sold Martinelli on a hit to Saka fairly early on, a fair few weeks ago before it was cool to sell Martinelli. But no, Ben White's comfortable, but I would still go triple Arsenal attack. They are conceding goals, aren't they, Seb? Like, they're looking a little bit vulnerable at the back.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of vulnerable at the back, we were talking just before we started this about Bamford. You went with Bamford. Last time we spoke, we were bigging up Gnonto. Obviously, lots has changed, right? But Rodrigo, Gnonto, Rodrigo got injured. Bamford's getting his starts, but not really producing for you. What's your feeling there?
Loads wouldn't have considered Bamford because he hadn't seen Premier League minutes, still only getting 60 as he recovers from his long absence. But I thought I'd seen enough, and I like getting on players as early as possible. And obviously, it was ahead of a double. I bought Bamford. He did get an assist. I think I got 7 points from him. But I bought Bamford because of what I saw against Accrington Stanley and what I saw against Cardiff. 2 FA Cup performances where he looked really good. Now, that opposition is not Premier League opposition. And of course, he's never going to look as good against Premier League opposition. But against Cardiff and Accrington Stanley, he was off the charts from memory.
If we could play Cardiff and Accrington Stanley every week, Leeds would be fine, mate. And I'm up for that, yeah.
But that Cardiff game, I think he got a couple of assists. Don't think he scored. One of his assists, I think it was for Firpo, was just delightful. And
that reverse ball was gorgeous.
Yeah, it was. And I saw the interview post-match and I thought, yeah, this is a guy. I've always liked him as an FPL asset. We should like strikers like Bamford. We like strikers that get high volume of chances. That's why we like Darw-in. That's why we like whoever. He might not be the best finisher. And this season I was looking at the worst against their XG. And top of that league, you got Bamford, you got Darw-in, you got Jesus. Doesn't bother me too much because I just want chance creation, not necessarily efficiency. But it is frustrating because he did have that one really good season, didn't he, under Bielsa, where he 17 Premier League goals or whatever he got,
and like 11 assists as well.
Useful, and he's on pens. We think he's on pens. He's got Southampton this week, so I'm very reluctant to sell him.
I think that's
Southampton just beat Chelsea and Leeds haven't been scoring goals, so it doesn't look great.
And I mean, so before we move on to your team next week then, and there is one big transfer you've made, I guess the last thing that stands out to me here, which is not your fault by any means, I think a lot of people have suffered this, is Nathan Ake. Just as soon as they sell Cancelo, we think maybe Ake is got that left back position nailed down, Rico Lewis maybe has a position, Pep goes and switches it up, brings back their injured Dyche and Laporte, and they're playing probably 3 players that no one had in the FPL defence. So what are you thinking there? You feel unfortunate? You got a plan to solve it?
I will be looking to get rid when I can, but I think for the immediate future, some of the blanks and doubles coming up, there's bigger priorities. And I still think there's a good chance he's a regular starter. I still think he could play 2 of the next 3 Premier League games, for example. It was good to see Laporte not travel for Man City. They play on Wednesday evening. This video goes out just before the game. But I expect Ake to start in the Champions League. We'll see. But Laporte is clearly injured. I think Pep said not sure about him being back ready for the weekend. And obviously he's struggled with injuries. So Laporte out does increase the chance of Ake starting Premier League games. But doesn't assure it. Like, it's not confirmed by any stretch. Because you've still got Diaz, you've still got Akanji, you've still got John Stones, who will be back soon, as options. Rico Lewis has had a lot of games, and obviously Kyle Walker plays a lot of games. So it's difficult to know exactly where Pep's going to play him. Does he play in a back four as a centre back on the left side centre back sometimes? Does he play left back a lot when they go to a 3? Yeah. So his route to getting in that 11, he's got a couple of spots depending on the systems being played. But now we're seeing Pep sort of playing Bernardo Silva in that makeshift role on the left, as he's done with Rico Lewis on the right. And I think even Rico has played left back, even though he comes inverted into midfield. So yeah, Pep's definitely the Tinkerman at the moment. I know he always is, but I've never known him rotate a defence quite like this. I don't think we've ever seen it this bad.
I mean, I think he's probing for not just rotation and, the usual tactical setups he goes for versus an opposition, but I think he's probing for a bit of a shift in system as well. We've seen some things change with Haaland. I think he's moving things around at the back again as well, which makes it harder to predict because we don't know where he's going to end up. Like when he goes from inverted fullbacks to wing backs and all that. What about John Stones when he's fit? Do you think he's first choice in that back 3 or 4?
Before he got injured, it was like, okay, you can't guarantee who's going to be starting in each slot. Although I think at the time Diaz and Laporte were injured, so both Akanji and Stones and Ake all looked fairly nailed. But from all of them, I do think Stones is his favourite centre back at the moment. Pep goes through flavour of the month. He does it a lot with his wide forwards and he does it a lot with his centre backs. There was a time, I think it was last season, where Diaz, off the back of being City's best defender by a country mile the year before, the year he joined, it was like, oh, he's now dropped for ages. I remember there was a time 6 months ago, or maybe it was a year ago, not long after Diaz signed, where it was like, oh, Laporte can't get in the team. He goes through phases, a bit like his wide forwards. We've seen Foden not getting games. We've seen Mahrez frozen out and then in a lot. He does the same with centre-backs. And at the moment, if you were to say, list Pep's most nailed centre-back, I think I would have if they're all fit, I think I'd actually have John Stones as number 1.
Fair. Well, I mean, Edison, speaking of nailed, although not that he's delivered his owners any points, but...
Premium goalkeepers are rubbish, mate. Premium goalkeepers are rubbish because premium goalkeepers don't make saves and they don't get bonus. Remember, with bonus points, you're competing with your teammates, which is why Kepa's done so well, because Chelsea aren't scoring 3-4 goals a game. So when Chelsea keep a clean sheet, not only does Kepa tick the boxes for all the things that the bonus point system likes, he gets the saves, he actually is a really good pass completion. And if you hit over 90% and over 30 passes, I think you get a big wave of points. But also he's competing with midfielders and forwards who aren't scoring and who aren't assisting. Therefore, the bonus just go Kepa's way. Yeah. It will never go Edison's way. It will rarely go Alisson's way. Don't buy premium goalkeepers unless they're similar in price to your budget, your mid-price goalkeepers.
Fair enough. You know what I want? A fullback Bernardo Silva next season. That'd be fun. A defender. Speaking of aspirational goals, let's look at your team for the upcoming game week 26, 25, 25. We're going into 25. There are too many game weeks. Run us through your team. I see there's a few blankers in there and there's one transfer you've made already. You have one remaining. And a healthy 4.6 million in the bank.
I do. 4.6 in the bank, which has now actually changed to 4.4 because I have made a transfer. So De Bruyne went out for Salah. But to run through my team, Kepa in goal, back 3 of White with a double, Ake, who's meant to be playing against his old club Bournemouth. Who knows what Pep does there. Patterson is in there. I'm selling Patterson. He ain't playing. And I'll speak more about why Patterson's not going to have a look in anytime soon. Salah comes in with the armband. Saka on a double. Andreas and Solly March, who doesn't play. Bamford, Haaland and Nketiah on a double. So at the moment, without any further transfers, I've made my one. I do have 2 free, so I've got 1 more free to make. I have 9 men. So I'll be making at least 1 more, which will get me 10 men, but probably 2 more, which should get me 11 men. Now, is that 11 men that will play? Well, I think they'll probably all play. I don't know if Ake starts, but I think the others should all be starting. Patterson, Seb, just to give you my 2 pence worth, for those that are thinking he's got a double and he'll play in one of them, Sean Dyche ain't a manager that rotates a winning team. Sean Dyche likes leaders. Coleman is playing well and Everton are winning games and they're keeping clean sheets and he's a leader. There is no way Patterson comes into that 11 when fit. He's got to earn his place, and I think he'll be on very restricted minutes to even have that opportunity. As long as Coleman is fit, Coleman is playing games. So if you own Patterson, it's time to sell, guys. I think it's time to sell. We've been unlucky. We've been waiting for this double going, he'll probably be fit. He played 60 for the under-21s last week. Wouldn't be surprised to see him in the squad for this double game week, but I'd be very surprised to see him starting Premier League football matches.
Or would you like prioritize a sale of Patterson now in this week? Okay, you wish you had the double, you might not get him, but because he's such low value, unless people are in a situation like you with a load of money in the bank, but that doesn't mean you wouldn't want to spend it elsewhere. Are you prioritizing that, or would you say, a Shaw or a Rashford? I'm not saying sell them, but they give you access to a higher tier of player. It is harder to go from Patterson to Trent than it is from Shaw to Trent, just for example. So would you still prioritize that? Or are there, certain players you want to bring in this week above all else?
I think it depends how much money you've got in the bank. Like, I've got ridiculous money in the bank. Don't quite know how that happened. I think Kane to Bamford. But because I've got money, Patterson to Trent works for me. Does it give you a benching headache further down the line? Then maybe. Patterson to Tarkowski. It also comes down to, do you have 10 or 9 men currently out playing, and to get to the 11? Because look, let's say you've got 9 or 10 playing and Patterson's there on your bench. Patterson for Tarkowski as a 4-point hit, you'll make those 4 points up just from minutes from Tarkowski, right? It's that classic cliche, isn't it? But it's not a 4-point hit if they're earning appearance points. And they're taking up a space of someone that wouldn't get appearance points anyway. So I still think Patterson becomes a high priority sell for most, because most don't have 11 men plus. But look, I know lots are selling Trippier and Shaw, and a lot of this comes down to chip strategy, because they're thinking they'll be wildcarding soon and they can bring them back. And yes, you've got a bit of value tied up in Shaw and Trippier. Probably, we've all got probably more in Trippier than Shaw. I think I've got 0.3 in Shaw and considerably more in Trips. But I'd sell Patterson before them both. I'm probably going to sell Patterson and Shaw this game week, because I'm looking at possibly bringing in 2 defenders, both Trent and Tarkowski.
Interesting. So would you be avoiding, you said earlier you want to give Bamford one more week. Darwin is there. Maybe I'm just bringing my Darwin bias to this conversation, but that is accessible to you, or you're not interested in that? You want to fix your defence?
So the moves I've mentioned, Patterson to Trent or to Tarkowski, Shaw to Trent or Tarkowski, that's 2 defensive transfers. That'd be a 4-point hit, because I've got 1 free left, that one, and then the 4-point hit. I could increase that to a -8 and Bamford could go to Darwin. And I've got the money in the bank to do all those 3 additional transfers. Now, I'm still not sure if I make one of those moves, 2 of those moves, or 3 of those moves. So coming in potentially could be Darwin, Tarkowski and Trent, or it could just be one of the 3, or it could be 2 of the 3. I think I'm most likely to make the defender transfers. Darwin's obviously the most fun pick of all of them, but something has always told me Bamford versus Southampton in what was going to be a blank game week. I was like, that's the fixture I really want Bamford for. Now, is Darwin worth an additional 4 points on Bamford? Most watching this will be screaming at the screen going, absolutely he is. But I'm convinced Darwin's going to get 120 minutes. And I kind of don't want to be taking a 4-point hit for someone that in a double that's only going to get 120, and then there's a difficult fixture coming up when I know I probably want Tony for game week 27 in that slot. So if I buy Darwin, it's probably only for 1 week, because I really want to go to Tony next week, who has a good fixture and then a double. And I could just go Bamford to Tony and forget the -4.
I think there are 2 things there. Firstly, like, Darwin is attractive if you can make it happen, but 120 minutes might be about right. His X-Mins are definitely down with Jota, with Firmino back. I think we need to see if Jota, Darwin and Salah all start together and in what position, because that would give us more of a guide. At the moment, I think it's educated guesswork, but it is still guesswork. Well, we know Salah's nailed on the right. That's fine. Ignore that. Darwin is notionally a 9. Oh, mate, you're looking angelic.
Got a lot of sunlight coming in, mate.
That makes up for mine. I'm a bit dark. But yeah, we need to sort that out. But yeah, so, I mean, Darwin is notionally a 9. I think that's why he will play there long term for him. But he has been playing on the left, which he's done well, because Hakpo wasn't really performing on the left, has been moved into that kind of false 9 Firmino type role, back to the 4-3-3. And I think that's worked better for Liverpool, offensively at least. Let's not talk about the defence following last night. But what we need to see is it Hakpo that is going to sort of drop and be the squad player for Jota to come back in? And is Jota going left and Darwin up front? Or some other combination? It was Darwin now the one that's going to drop. I'd be surprised, and I am trying to set my want for him to do well aside. I do think he's the first choice 9 and appears to be the first choice backup on the left, I think probably to Jota. But we need that confirmation. So for me, the reason I went on that little journey is I can see why you'd ignore Darwin. Do you have the funds to go Trent and Robbo, or like Trent and Van Dijk, over, say, Tarkowski and Trent this week?
Oh, good question. That'd be really tight. Do I want double Liverpool defence though? I mean, after watching them last night against Real Madrid, I don't
I
think I
would I
do.
would say on that whole double thing, that always feels a bit like a trap to me, where it's like, well, if you want Trent, doubling is fine because it's not double Liverpool defence. It's Trent versus Patterson and Robbo versus, I don't know, Shaw or something, or versus Tarkowski, actually, in your example. So the doubling up, it feels like you're exposing yourself mentally more to it. But
Yeah.
logically, that's not the decision you're making. You're making an individual decision about the individual player.
It's a good point, and I love your journeys you go on, and I want to speak about those attackers too. But I guess the point on the defenders, I've just tried it, and I'm point 0.7 short if
Oh,
Patterson is
okay,
one of the guys I
that's a bit.
sell,
Okay,
but I could sell Shaw and Trippier, for example, and
yeah.
achieve it. But no, yeah, I think that's now an
I like the
unlikely route
idea
I'll
of you
go
keeping
down.
Tony in mind as well, because that would probably block Tony, wouldn't it, later?
It would. Tony's
Yeah.
more expensive than Bamford. I don't know how much more. I think it's probably about point 0.5 more. So yeah, I need a little bit in the bank for that move. Tony's 7.7 and Bamford's 7.2. Yeah, point 0.5.
Fair.
So yeah, I think it'll be one Liverpool defender. And I think Trent always edges it in our thinking. But when you look at the numbers, actually, Robbo's kind of matching him. But I like touch maps and heat maps and average position maps. And again, even against Real Madrid, Trent is always that little bit higher up the pitch, usually. He has been in the last few. The forwards, there's Salah on the right, and then there are 4 players competing for 2 spots. That's essentially what we're saying now. Bobby and Jota are fit. And I'm with you. Darwin, for me, is number 1 out of those 4. And I think he's number 1 in the 9 and probably number 1 on the wide left. And I've liked him playing wide left. And I think it's taken the pressure off him a little bit in terms of goal scoring by playing on the left. He's still getting into the same positions in terms of goal scoring or similar positions, but his responsibilities have changed a little bit and perhaps he doesn't feel that pressure. I don't know, the psychological effect of going, you're not in the 9 now, you're on the left, and perhaps that eases the burden. I don't know, but he's looked good the last couple of weeks. And Hakpo's looked good in the 9 role, more comfortable. And Darwin did play a lot on the left at Benfica, or he did drift left a lot at Benfica, even when he was playing as a central striker. It's worth noting that. Interestingly enough, I think Hakpo did as well at PSV. When Jota and Bobby have come on in the last 2 games, both in the Premier League and against Real Madrid last night, they've both come on together, right? It's been a dual sub both times. So we know Klopp quite likes that idea of taking 2 off, bringing 2 on. But both times we've seen Bobby playing central, of course, because that's really his only slot, and Jota going left. I really want to see in one of those games, I wish I'd seen Jota coming on in the 9 and Darwin still being on the pitch on the left, because then that's when we might see, because we're thinking maybe our first choice Liverpool front 3 when they're all fit, maybe it is Jota, Darwin. We're not sure who's 9 and who's left, but Salah as well. Yeah. But we haven't seen those 3 together yet. Even in Klopp's substitutions, he could have chosen to go, Bobby, you wait 10 minutes. Jota's going on now and Bobby in 10 minutes. The fact we've not seen those 3 combine on the pitch together yet is a little bit like, I'm a bit like, oh, okay, yeah, it's partly down to fitness, but it's partly makes me think, oh, we're just going to see a lot of rotation in this double game week, and we're going to see a lot of 60-minute subs. Yeah. And I think that puts me off Darwin that little bit more. If Darwin was playing alongside Jota and Salah on a regular basis, or we'd seen at least a little sample of that, I might have been more inclined to go Darwin. I guess you could argue with Darwin and Jota in the same 11, though, maybe we'll see fewer chances for Darwin. Maybe it's a good thing they're not playing together. Maybe Darwin benefits from a Bobby or a Hakpo dropping a bit deeper, because when Jota plays in the 9, he's less of a false 9. He's more on the last man, and Jota does attract big chances. And when Jota is attracting big chances, does that take a small amount of chances off Darwin? We don't know the answer to that, but I think it perhaps might do.
Maybe. I guess it depends on the role they're playing, right? Whether it's that left coming inside, which Jota and Darwin have both done to get their chances, or whether it's the 9, which I believe Darwin and Jota would probably perform differently to one another. Also worth noting that obviously Klopp's goal is not to get a certain player a certain number of goals, but to increase Liverpool's goals overall. So if overall goals go up, even if Darwin's share falls, does his real number still go up? So we're fine. And then assist threat. Right? You know, Darwin's assist threat is underrated, I don't think is fair to say, but we talk about his goal scoring so much. His assist threat is right up there, and if there's another goal scorer on the field, you assume he's going to keep creating chances for them. I think really, and frustratingly, because it's this week we need the information, we just need to know, does Darwin have access to, I think you put it nicely, he plays the first 60 minutes as part of whatever front 3. Does he have access to being part of another front 3 in the final 30 minutes? And that's just what we don't know. And also, Liverpool may be blanking in 28, depending on the outcome of some FA Cup results. Has that come into your thinking at all? Chip strategy,
Massively.
seeing how fixtures?
Massively. It all comes down to how do Fulham and Leeds perform in the FA Cup? Because if Leeds win that game, and at the moment they're about 40% likely, according to the bookies, to win that game. If Leeds win the game, then Liverpool play in 28. And if Liverpool play in 28, I want triple Liverpool this week. I want Darwin in my team now, and I'll forget about Toney. But I've got to look at it and think Fulham are more likely to beat Leeds than Leeds more likely to beat Fulham. We will know the answer to this. The good news is the game is very soon. We'll know before game week 26. We'll have a couple of weeks to navigate it, but we won't know, of course, before 25. The Fulham Leeds game is an intriguing one. And Fulham season ticket holders, someone I pod with, Dean Jones on Chasing Green Arrows, is a Fulham season ticket holder. They're being charged 40 quid a ticket. And there are a lot of season ticket holders, including Dean, who are rebelling against that and going, they're boycotting the game. It's a TV game as well. So I think that's going to be a half full. Dean thinks this is going to be a half full Craven Cottage. So again, that 60% chance of Fulham winning, maybe it's still 58% or 59%, but perhaps it's not 60 when you take into account that there'll be so many fans not in the stadium. I'm trying to find small gains and twist the narrative to suit my decisions, but just wanted to throw that out there for those that perhaps aren't aware of it.
Such as being an FPL manager, right? We see some data, we see some matches, and then we make it work for the thing we want to do anyway. Speaking of the thing you want to do anyway, is there anything you'd like to cover in this team as well? We're recording this week on Wednesday afternoon, we should say, rather than live. So unfortunately, we can't do any questions, but we'll try to in the future. But is there anything you think people might ask about your team or might ask you here? What do you think people would want?
I guess tons will be watching going, what's his chip strategy? What's his plans? And it's difficult to say until we know the outcome of that Fulham game. That Fulham... Not for every team, but for my team, the Fulham versus Leeds game and whether Liverpool play in 28 will dictate possibly my chip strategy. If Liverpool don't play, there will be many that look at a potential wild card in 27 and a bench boost in 29 and possibly to navigate or to create a better 29 squad, a free hit in between that and 28. I do not like the free hit 28 strategy. I don't like the blanks on offer. I don't see there's a huge upside there. I'm more inclined to, if I do get forced into a wild card in 27, forced is the wrong word, perhaps just going wild card 27 and bench boost 29, but actually not doing the free hit in between as most will on that strategy. I looked last night, I could still put out an all right team in 28 and cover some of the main players.
And I think if Liverpool don't play in 28 as well, like a team of 9 players might basically be all right anyway. There's not that much that's attractive for us to really make the most of the free hit from the quick look I had.
Yeah, exactly that. And the chip strategy I'm most likely to do, whether Liverpool blank or not, I think will be probably my original plan, which was before Tuesday's announcements of double game weeks in 29, which we knew were coming, is free hit in 29 for the big double. And then you focus your transfers before that on 28. I probably end up, even without Liverpool, I don't think I do get to 9 or 10, Seb. I think for my team, I'd likely, especially because I want to target someone like Toney, who doesn't play in 28, I'd probably get to 7. And I think 7 could still be okay, or 8 possibly. But then that would be a wildcard 33 and a bench boost 34. And I'd be dead ending my team. And I quite like that because I think 32 is a blank and I'd dead end towards that. So I still think that's my preferred chip strategy. But it would help us FPL managers out a lot if Liverpool did play in 28. But I would love to know that before this deadline. Because if they were to play in 28, Seb, I'd almost certainly be buying Darw-in. And I think I'm probably less likely to buy Darw-in than likely. I think I'll end up going Trent and Tarko as 2 additional transfers. From the 3 I mentioned, I think I'll probably end up doing 2 and taking a -4. But I want to ask you, Seb, what would you do in my shoes? Would you go Darw-in? I mean, you're a Leeds fan. Can Bamford score against Southampton and then Bamford to Toney? Is that stronger than Darw-in?
So I think your strategy is pretty reasonable. I think it's probably close to what I do. I would be tempted by Darw-in, but I'm also aware that it's hard for me to answer that objectively because I've had Darw-in in my team since the wild card. And also, as much as I try and be, balanced about it, because he's not scored the goals, because that's attractive, people going, oh, he's terrible, you naturally want to fight against that and you sort of protect your asset, which is a bad way to play, right? I should treat it objectively. So I have that desire to recommend Darw-in. But I think your best strategy is avoiding, because it gives you that Bamford to Toney. It doesn't matter about Darw-in, it's the Bamford to Toney route that I think is better for your team over the next few than going into Liverpool, especially with, like you say, the uncertainty. If we knew about 28, fine, but we don't, and so you have to bring that in. And then I think you mentioned there as well, there is maybe another little slot later to play chips, and that sort of 32, 34 period. We're going to get another big double and another big blank. And it sounds like you might flirt with this, if you're comfortable with your team over this period, there is the chance to save your chips for that moment later. And the important thing to remember is if you put 7 players out in 28 or whatever it was and scored 20 points, it is everyone that week you're competing with, of course it is. But really, it's those corresponding people in the 33 week or whenever that other blank would be. That's what you're fighting against later. So you'll drop back, but it's whether you can then catch it up. So I think having the discipline to carry that strategy out in a level-headed fashion is the way that we achieve success here. And by achieve success, I mean probably top 200k for both of us, mate?
It's a difficult season. I say that off the back of my worst red arrow ever.
But bless Joe for putting my rank up the 1 week I'm ahead of you in ages. Normally we just have yours up here, but that made me feel very good about myself.
Yeah, I'm glad, mate. That's what I'm here for. I think that's probably the direction I'll go, and that's good to get your take as well. I like the chip strategy that I'm not committed to, but I've kind of favoured for a while. Yeah. And I don't think what we saw on Tuesday changes that. And I'm excited the fact that I own someone like a Solly March who was a double, and very few, I think loads that look to perhaps wildcard in 27 will be loads of teams that go Brighton are doubling in a nice double and Brentford are doubling a nice double. And I perhaps can't get to those players or don't have any one of those players. Now, look, between Brentford and Brighton, it's not like I'm in a great position. I've got one player, but that feels like one more than a lot of people. I just hope Tony doesn't get that yellow card suspension. He's on 8 at the moment, and that could really hinder my plans.
It could, although 2 more yellow cards needed. And we see this quite often, don't we? I know Mitrovic burnt us recently, but we have many more examples where, I mean, even Tony himself, right, with the potential pending ban, it turns out if you just ignored that, it would have been much better. We don't know that at the time. But I think we don't want to let something like 2 yellow cards, and he's aware that if he gets one, he'll get banned. We don't want that to weigh on us too heavily.
Yeah, fair point. And I completely agree with you there. I guess captaincy we've not discussed. I think I'm going to go Salah. In fact, I am going to go Salah.
Over Saka? Saka vice?
Yeah. I like Saka a lot, but I prefer Salah's fixtures. I prefer Salah's fixtures quite a lot. I think Saka goes to Leicester. If that was Leicester at the Emirates, I'd perhaps look at Saka. I probably would go Saka, actually. I think that probably swings it. But yeah, Saka plays Leicester, who I always like at the King Power. I know they're not a great defence, but I think Leicester will give them a real good game. And then playing against Dyche, who they had problems with a few weeks ago. Now, that was at Goodison, and this is at the Emirates, and I do think Arsenal will win, but I think it'll be tight. Sean Dyche teams don't tend to concede many ever. While Salah plays Palace, who are a little bit all over the place at the moment. And then they play Wolves, who again, really inconsistent. Well, they were doing all right until then going lost against Bournemouth. And I think, again, at Anfield, I expect that to be fairly comfortable for Liverpool. That might be a bit of a stretch too far knowing how Liverpool are playing, but Liverpool versus Wolves at Anfield could be a 3-0.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think I'd make a similar decision. It's close enough, though, a bit like your Haaland and your Rashford or whoever else. It's close enough that beforehand, we're all going to go, both are good options, either or is fine, and then one of them will score 30, one of them will score 10, and it'll feel like it was obvious after the time. But I don't think, that's fair beforehand. On Liverpool, you just mentioned there that, you're not sure how they're playing, but you want Salah. How do you feel about separating something like Salah's performances and Liverpool's performances? And I think last night, again, we're on Wednesday here, so we've just seen Liverpool lose 5-2 to Real Madrid. Although a bizarre, like an amazing game. I only caught some highlights, but an amazing game. Some bizarre goals. From an FPL point of view, Darw-in scored, Salah scored and got an assist. You'd be happy even if they've conceded 5. As a trend owner, you obviously wouldn't be happy.
Yeah.
But where do you draw that line between Liverpool were, would it be fair to say bad, after at least the first 15 minutes, but you still would have got FPL points? How do you assess that as an FPL manager?
Yeah, I usually don't look at team form. I must admit I don't. I look at team... Well, no, that's a lie. I look at team form, but I break it down. I don't go, the team are doing well, the team are doing poorly. I do, the team attack is doing well, the team defence is doing poorly. And I very much do that with my FPL decisions. So when we're looking at Liverpool assets, probably not just now, but if I've been looking at Liverpool assets even a few weeks ago, a bit like you did on your wild card, you still went double Liverpool attack. You separated I will chase Liverpool attack because their numbers have been good all season. Liverpool's underlying numbers have been good all season. Their conversion's not been great, but they've been pretty useful. They're creating tons of chances, but defensively they've been terrible all season. So whilst I won't consider Trent and Robbo, I will consider Salah and Darwin. And that's not just a line for this week, I would have said the same thing 6 weeks ago. And I saw your smirk there with my reference to Liverpool's doing well.
I was just thinking, you were like, oh yeah,
numbers.
when the wild card you did this, and I was just thinking, yeah, and I dropped 400k rank, mate. So don't know about that.
Maybe you were unlucky. Maybe variance played its part, Seb.
Variance, that cruel mistress. Okay, right. One last question for you then. Let's say an aspirational pick, a player you either can't or won't get this week that you think could really hurt you or really do well for someone else. So a recommendation that you yourself can't access.
I mean, it's really out there because he's been injured for so long, but for the same reason I like Darwin, I really like Jota. And I think Jota chances fall his way. And we saw pre-injury, Klopp liked Jota a lot. When he came off the bench in the Premier League last weekend, he looked really good, really sharp. It was only half an hour. I think Jota might start one of these 2 games in the double. Annoyingly, for those that perhaps aren't going to buy Jota or Darwin, the fixture spread's quite good. They play on Saturday. Bearing in mind they play Tuesday Champions League at home, so they've not travelled back from Spain. They go to London to play Crystal Palace on Saturday. Then they host Wolves on Wednesday. And then their weekend fixture after that is Man United on the Sunday. So they've actually got a good enough spread for Klopp if he wants to go, it's the same 11, it's the same 11. But I do think he'll rotate and trial Jota, hopefully Darwin and Salah, to see those 3 together. And if he does that, I think Jota off 120 minutes could be a good point. Could be a really nice differential. And I bet his ownership's 1%. I'm just looking now. It's probably, it's 0.5.
0.5, oof.
He's 8.8 though, so he is more expensive than Darwin by 0.1. So obviously you're going to go Darwin over Jota at the moment because you think you'll get more minutes. But I wouldn't be surprised to see them both get 120. And I just think Jota's loads of fun. And
you wouldn't go near Hakpo. He's mid-7s midfielder, isn't he?
I wouldn't go near Hakpo. He's a midfielder, and I think the midfield spots are perhaps a bit more difficult and a bit more precious at the moment. And again, I like the chance creation that I think we'll see for Jota and Darwin. Jota. I still think, by the way, I'm recommending Jota as a left field differential pick. I still think if I'm closer to buying one of them, and I've told you my transfer plans, I may buy Darwin and I'm not going to buy Jota. Yeah. But if you're really chasing and you want to go rogue, Jota could be fun, is what I'm saying.
Fair, I hear you. Well, we'll check in next week and see how not only your team has done, but your aspirational pick of Jota. You can claim some moral points, if not real points, for that one.
You can only claim the points if they're in your team, mate.
And sometimes not even them when you're on your bench or someone else has captained him and you haven't. Yeah. But I think we will wrap it up there for now. It's been a pleasure to do this again with you, and I think we're going to be doing this a little more regularly, right?
I think so, mate. I look forward to having our weekly check-ins.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being such great company, and best of luck with your team to the tune of, what, about 64, 65k there? That's how much you're allowed to rise, yeah? Otherwise I might have to take a little break. Thank you, mate. Have a lovely day. Have a good week, and good luck to everyone else as well in Gameweek 25. That is it from us. Goodbye.
See you guys.